Right, well, good evening and welcome to, I think, Restart Sailing Show 27, isn't it, John, if the maths are right?
Yeah, fantastic to be here, and I think things are going up. And a bit later in the show, we have an absolutely excellent guest. So yeah, I think things are looking really good.
Yep, we're here in the UK. I think you're in sunnier climates, but sailing's starting to happen, won't it?
Yes, I'm here in Vila, Portugal, and it's one of the places where they have been able to have international competition. So a lot of classes have had their championships saved, as it were, because they couldn't be hosted in their original venues.
Yes, so back to the famous old three stages. I think we've now moved from the aggressive social distancing here, aren't we? More into the moderate social distancing and starting to see open meetings starting to happen, aren't we? And regional
Yeah,
championships.
especially because 12th of April we have that change in the steps, and that's a really significant one for us as a sport.
That's right. It's certainly been busy here. People queuing up to have a haircut, which looks like you were there, John, but different
Yeah,
arrangement.
yeah. I think the hairdresser felt very proud of all the hard work. It was sort of like shearing a sheep, and I wondered if I ought to pay extra for
Yes, yes.
blunting the
Uh,
scissors.
Unfortunately, I didn't quite make the queue. It was several days long, but hopefully by next show we'll be sort of there. And then really, yeah, moving towards the sort of the nationals and international scene, which I think the international scene's still quite challenging, isn't it, in terms of events
It
coming and
is, and
going.
we're just so close to the Olympic Games. It's like a mad rush to get the qualification events there, and I think a lot of people were accepting which we might not be able to go to Japan and train until actually the Olympic Games is technically open. But we'll see more on that in up and coming shows.
Yes, right. So moving on. So
So
all looking
first of
good.
all,
Good. Yeah, yeah.
close to home, we don't need to go into the detail that much. These things are looking so much better than they were over the winter. And hopefully the new opening up isn't going to make a big difference. And sailing as a sport, we're very safe in terms of distancing, ventilation. We have sunshine, and we're out on the water, well away from each other. So the cases are looking good, and I think a lot of that has been driven by the vaccination program. So
Yes.
that's the one cue I'm really interested in, not so
Yeah,
much
and
the haircut.
it was encouraging that the different stages haven't seen a massive uplift, have they? You obviously expect a small one, but nothing of any significance.
I mean, the figures I always look at are the 7 day moving average because that smooths everything out because over weekends there's less numbers taken. But it looks like we're not even leveling off. It looks like things are going down. But we do need to take the pandemic seriously. I haven't actually put this graph up, but the key thing I look at to see how serious it is the number of excess deaths. And that's the number of deaths that you have over and above a normal year. And it's great that that's now leveling out, and that's sort of following the trend we see here with the new cases.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's looking very good, as it is in Portugal. It's a much smaller country, as you can see from the scale, but they've been very good at the lockdown, controlling the virus, and the events are happening.
Mm.
So we recently had a 470 Worlds here. They're now doing a warm-up regatta in preparation for their Europeans, which was voted on by the sailors. And the people are training hard. You can really see, who put the time into to gain weight and fitness or whatever over the winter. I mean, it's really clear that the hard work has paid off. And I think for those younger sailors or sailors who are in their first Olympic Games, first Olympic cycle, they have really probably benefited from this extra year. The only thing I do have to say, we're still at the stage now that the international sailing is purely for elite sailors. So that's sailors who actually get paid to compete. So in other words, for us, that's the British sailing team are the ones who are exempt to go and do this event. And Villamora actually had a special exemption, so even people from so-called red countries could come and avoid the quarantine and race and compete. But I think it won't be long now until events are opened up for the amateur sailors to do their classes international events. And recently announced, if we move to the next slide,
Yeah.
is the Dutch Regatta held in Medemblik. Looks like that's going to go ahead. not quite such a great story when we look at the number of cases, but they are looking to host that regatta at the beginning of June with reduced numbers and spread over 2 weeks. So that may be their last big regatta before the Olympic Games. Who knows?
Yeah.
A lot of people are doing, a lot of venues are doing much more social media than they used to, and YouTube has been super busy, as has the live streaming. And I think that's something we can definitely talk to our next guest on.
Well, yes, and I think that's been one of the great things
well.
to come out of this situation is the adoption technology has been much more rapid, in the last 12 months than it has, say, in the last 10 years, hasn't it? And I think
well, most of us are stuck at home. I think YouTube and the rest of it, it's a great way to engage with the sport, and I'm just so glad that we're able to do it. I did a little bit of live commentating, and I really enjoyed it. And I think hopefully the sport as a whole there will be, as you say, some silver linings to the clouds.
And I think sailing lends itself to the sort of the social media, the specialist story. When we talk to Tom in a minute, we can see that in a massive way. It's sort of made for social media, and the situation has really accelerated that adoption, hasn't it?
Well, the only thing which made me very sad was when the controller of the drone got wet, and that was the end of that. So yeah, I should have mentioned the big men. So you've got the 2021 Finn European Championships going on, and I saw a few famous faces. Both Giles Scott and Ben Cornish are back from the America's Cup racing on Ineos, and I was chatting to Ben, and he says he's currently too big for a Finn. So when I struggled to get up to fighting weight for a radial, it shows just how strong he is now to be too heavy for a Finn. But that's a fantastic event, like 30 countries, and it's the last big event before the World. So really good indicator of who's likely to get that final Olympic place as a European country.
And the last Olympics for the class, sadly, as well.
Well, you say that. Let's talk about that in about 3 weeks' time, because what's happened is 9 out of 10 of the Olympic classes has been selected. In other words, the offshore event hasn't been approved. So what actually happens with that 10th medal, we don't know. Probably we'll know a lot more in around 3 weeks, because if they don't have the offshore, which is looking increasingly likely, because if they were going to have the offshore, they would have approved it, or maybe approved it subject to review. You could see in a very sort of long shot that it reverted back to the Finn, or if you look at the kite surfing at the moment, you've got a mixed relay, which sounds not really a very normal event for sailing Olympics, and maybe they will just give an additional medal there, so you can have a men's event.
Oh, well. We look forward. I'm sure the Finn class will be lobbying hard.
Well, there's lots of lobbying. Let's talk in a couple of shows' time. I just really hope sailing as a sport don't lose that 10th medal.
Yeah. So the group's been very active again, and lots of good questions about things like changing rooms and cleaning.
Well, people just keen to go sailing.
Yeah. That's good to see everyone in the community helping each other, and people solving a problem and then sharing it, rather than trying to do everything on their own.
And once again, the RWA has been very good at putting their updates and answering questions, because sometimes it's the questions that bring up the solutions that we might not have thought about.
Well, yes, it's impossible to think of everything that may be coming up, and I think by having the group, people can ask the questions and really self-help, can't they?
Absolutely.
Right, okay, so quick canter through this. We've passed the 8th of March, we passed the 29th of March. The 29th of March was the most significant one from sports opening up, and this week we're now the 12th of April, which is really lots of things.
So we're about halfway there in terms of 4 steps.
Yeah, and on time, which is good. I think it's been a sensible sort of timeline, hasn't it?
Absolutely, and we may look at doing pop-up shows or change the timing slightly, so we can look at having shows coming shortly after these changes, so we can have a quick discussion about what they really mean for us as a sport.
Yeah, and it certainly feels better than last summer. My personal feeling was things opened up very quickly, all in a rush, didn't they? Which I think.
Well, I like to think we learned.
Yeah. It accelerated some of the issues, and this more phase thing. I know people like the gyms are sort of complaining a bit, but I think this is more controlled. And
I did think it was interesting to see who decided to use the opportunity to go to the gym and who decided to use it to go to the pub, and who decided to do both. But there we go.
Yeah, interesting. And then the next big one is the 17th of May. Things like overnight stays.
And this makes it easier for events over one day to go on. I think that's probably the big thing.
Yeah, the most significant one is the overnight stays are allowed, which at the moment they're only really allowed at self-catering level, aren't they? So it makes,
exactly.
It makes 2-day, 3-day, multiple day events, much harder. And obviously the message is still to minimise travel, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's very clear on that wording to minimise travel. I get myself in trouble on the group, so I sort of try and choose my words more carefully now. I do think it's really important to try and support your local sailing club, because that's hopefully the place you're going to be sailing not only this year but for years to come, and that ticks both boxes. Because it would be so sad if we lose some of the sailing clubs due to the COVID crisis.
Yeah. And I think although we get into these debates, I think that it is good to see the wording minimise travel, whereas I think some countries put specific numbers on there, like France. I think it's 5 kilometres.
Yeah, it's unfortunate if you live just half a kilometre too far away or whatever.
Well, that's right. And a lot of people actually live quite a long way from the sailing, if they're sort of inland or whatever, or need to come to the south coast for a big boat.
You say that. I lived inland for most of my life, and you'll be surprised how many little puddles there are.
Yeah. But it allows a bit of sort of discretion, doesn't it, in terms of
maybe not good for an RS800 to have a tiny little puddle, but there's comets and fireflies and all sorts of things that excel on. And sailing. That's what I think.
Yeah. So quickly going through. Really, I think the 4 stages, the 4 sort of tests. So I think the important thing is we really know how it's going to pan out and what the criteria is. I think that helps immensely, doesn't it?
Yeah, planning. That's one of my favourite words as a coach.
Yeah. And then the RWA have been very good at translating this into sailing speak, haven't they? Not quite sure.
It sounded to me they had most of the work done before it even started. There was a couple of little refinements, but they were refinements, no more than that.
Yeah. And I'm not quite sure if this is the latest one from last month, but I think
I've got to be honest, without looking too closely, it's hard for me to see this.
I think just some sort of small refinements coming in. Seeing lots of sailing. The evidence is that the clubs are booming. Big events over Easter in terms of the local club regattas, and we're now here's the RS400 regatta at Chichester. I think one Ian Walker was there, I think in 3rd or 4th, so familiar with that. And then I think the solos down at Salcombe. So some good events going on, but in a sort of controlled sort of manner, which is good to see. Right. Okay. So let's bring Tom in.
So first of all, thank you so much for joining us. You've been there in the background listening to all the chat with the sort of big picture. But I just have to say thank you very much for MozzySails. Let me get that right. Which has been absolutely amazing, and my wife has got to be one of your biggest fans, and she says that we need to change our show setup to make it closer to how you present, but probably best for you to explain. So it's Tom Morris, MozzySails.
Yeah, so I mean, it's been a bit of a crazy winter for myself, but it doesn't feel that long ago since I was last on your show, just after the Drake at Dash.
Yeah.
But I've been always been quite a fan of YouTube and sharing my thoughts on sailing, and I've got my YouTube channel MozzySails where I do that, and in the past it's revolved primarily around my own sailing and critiquing that and analysing it. And in fact, the previous lockdown we did a few shows just around the RS800 and that niche, and talking to guys in the fleet and doing a few shows which are obviously popular with those people. But this lockdown, we couldn't access our boats, so we kind of turned
expanded.
Yeah, we expanded. Yeah, so we always have quite a lot of chat between me and a few good mates, Rob Gull and Tom Partington, on our WhatsApp group about various professional sailing events, and we just kind of turned out that chat to the rest of the world really on YouTube, and thought we kind
And
of
it went
share it.
down. It went down really, really well.
Yeah, it was. I was, to be honest, taken aback by how many people watched it, but looking back and kind of not surprised in a way. I mean, I'm in kind of a fortunate position where, I'm never going to be on America's Cup team. I've got no ambitions to be. I'm not a professional broadcaster. I'm not going to be involved with that ever. So we're in kind of a unique position where we're kind of knowledgeable enough to be able to speculate and dive into those details without having to worry about, a production team reining us back or offending future
Or getting into trouble.
employers. Yeah, exactly. So I think that was kind of, it was a bit of an angle on it which we could provide, and a bit of interest, and we had plenty of time to do so in lockdown as well. So
And the reach was absolutely amazing. Where you were getting the pickup from?
yeah. I mean, obviously the nations which were doing the AC were all watching it, so I had a huge amount of Italians, Kiwis, but also like the not traditional sailing nations like Australia, but plenty of views from the Middle East, Asia as well. So yeah, that was really kind of flattering to just to think people are tuning in from around the world to watch me and a couple of mates talk rubbish about sailing boats. Yeah.
And that's the beauty of YouTube, isn't it? Because also, it's always there for people to go back. And
and you even got the national press picking up, which was good to see, and a good boost for sailing, wasn't it?
Yeah. I think they were keen to kind of pick up on that kind of amateur kind of take on it. But again, we could say things, talk about things in a greater detail that the teams, there's so many people who probably could do what we did, but for whatever kind of political and contractual reasons can't. And we could provide an angle on that, and I think quite a lot of the press picked on that as well, that they're probably more likely to find insights from people who didn't have any editorial control over them. So yeah, we had quite a few of the press kind of watching through the videos and quoting us. And
I think you do yourself an injustice. I don't think there's that many people who could do what you did, actually. I really don't. I mean, I've really enjoyed it, and I think probably people they like to have that sort of inset and sort of sticking your neck out a tiny bit, as opposed to the stock answers. Every time I interview a sailor on the ramp and they said they have a solid day, I'm thinking, well, that doesn't really sell us as a sport, does it?
Can't all be solid, can they?
Well, there are some athletes who have a solid day neady every day, but that's another.
But it's actually it's the sort of the real stories that are more interesting, isn't it? The home truths, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that's it. And I mean, we were fortunate in a way of how open the America's Cup was this time, with the amount of data sharing, the camera angles, and the amount of content they put up online, which made it such a more accessible event. And I would just kind of view myself as, sometimes you sit down to watch sports and you've always got that one mate who's good to sit down and watch because they know all the ins and outs of it. They know all the player transfers, who was where and the kind of backstory, and they can just rumble along in the background and kind of give you a little bit more. And that's kind of how we approached it. It's the way me and my friends, Rob and Tom, talk on the WhatsApp group. So we thought, this other people could enjoy this and share this and, find the speculation. And we're prepared. We had the time and we're prepared to, spend many hours rooting through the footage to kind of find those little details. And and that's what we kind of provided. And it was other stuff as well. It's not just me. It was stuff I was seeing shared on Instagram by other people, on sailing forums and stuff, and just picking up on those pieces and just kind of packaging it so it's a bit more accessible. And and hopefully that enable people to enjoy the event a little bit more.
And that's the reason it went viral, because people enjoyed it. It's that simple. So, can you tell us a bit about the RS800? That's where it's all started. Fantastic boat, and actually sort of part of a fantastic family. The whole RS family. We've got the 300s on the next show.
Yeah. So I mean, I mean, to be honest, even with the 200s before, I've always been quite a fan of, you know, analysing my own sailing, and I've used videos to do that, and I've tried to share it with the fleets. And it's, you know, it's good when you go to events, you can chat to people, and people have seen the sailing you're doing, and it's, you know, an extra bit of engagement. But yeah, really last couple of years, because I got into the 800 class, and it was initially actually just meant to be a short-term thing with Guy Fillmore, who was he's in the military, so he's never really sure where he is for a long period of time. So it was just a way of, you know, really getting the most of that year sailing we had together, and we shared it, and yeah, that's how it took off.
It must have been good because you carried on and carried on.
well, I've been fortunate that he's not had to go anywhere too exotic recently, so we're never really sure when the kind of last season of 800 sailing is going to be. But we're locked in for a good season this year anyway, so we're definitely, I've got him until Christmas. So
you've got him nailed down.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Because you'll be defending the national championships, I guess, won't you?
Yeah. So we're got plenty of events on. I just bring the calendar up here. I mean, actually, our first one, Stokes Bay, they've had to reduce that to just one day, and that's this Saturday. So that's going to be our first kind of open meeting. It's just along the coast from us. We're actually toying with the idea of maybe sailing there from Hayling Island, just reduce the packing up and minimising the travel and stops on shore. So yeah, we've got that first up, and then later in the season we've got a big event in July. Now, actually, I'm not sure if June at Torbay for the RS Summer Regatta, and I'm not sure. I think this was coincidence, but it's actually the weekend after you're allowed to start kind of larger gatherings indoors, I think. So that's very convenient. So I think the the party in the evening there, if everything goes to plan, could be quite good. So we have to all behave, because that's the kind of the carrot at the end of it all, I think. And then obviously the nationals as well at Castle Cove. So back to Weymouth again, which is kind of a fun hunting ground for myself and Guy. We've done quite well there at events in the past. Both the national championships we've won have been at the academy, and now we've got this year at Castle Cove as well. So
I'm a member of both, so I'm biased.
Yeah, but no, I mean a great place to sail any boat, but especially skiffs. So really looking forward to going back there. The two clubs kind of offer different things in terms of the event feel. But I do love Castle Cove, that, you know, kind of sailing club feel, and probably gets the better of the sunsets at Castle Cove as well. So that to throw in the mix. So I'm really looking forward to that. Super fortunate actually last year that we could have an event, and that was probably down just to the space that Weymouth had available. So I should give them a shout out as well, because it was just incredible. We even got a national championships in, and it was rearranged.
On a time when many didn't.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we were relocated last minute, and there was a huge effort from the class association. Claire Sargent did a lot of work, and the guys at Weymouth just to get it set up at last minute. So yeah, that was a huge effort and massively appreciated, because it was a great event in the end, and really well run with lots of space on shore. So yeah, fantastic from those people.
That's why it was an Olympic venue.
yeah, exactly. So no, I'm really looking forward to the 2021 season, and you know, it's hard to take anything for granted at the moment. You don't know how things will change and develop. But just getting back out on the water these last few weeks have been a massive morale boost. I've really enjoyed that just down at my local club, Hayling Island, and but I'm looking forward to the season and being able to catch up with the kind of rest of the 800 family, and hopefully be in a position where we can have a beer together, have a drink, and be a bit more social onshore as well, because it feels a long time since that was possible, really.
Yeah, I get that. I really get that.
Right, good. So, just moving on then. Thank you, Tom. So, yeah, you mentioned about
Thank you very much.
Yeah, the local sailing, John. We've the sailing challenge based around the GPS tracking has been going great guns. We've had about over 100 sailing from the depths of the south coast up to, I think, the Orkney Islands. So we're really taking all parts of the UK out there, racing with little trackers and taking the results into the system, and then just seeing how it all goes, and we start to produce all the rankings. But yeah, just great to see everyone out there sailing now. I think that's the message, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Right, just moving on.
So
Right,
my angle is always the training. Train like you race and race like you train. And I just thought I'd stick one of my little favourite exercises up there, because as a coach, it's very easy just to go out and blow lots of whistles. And I was saying to Tom when we did the tech check, actually my hearing's not great these days from blowing too many whistles. So I'm a big fan of doing exercises that force you to do the boat handling work, but in a racing type environment. So one of the things that I really like is where you set a start line and you have a coach boat moving upwind, and the sailors have to stay within that imaginary triangle, which means the closer they get to the coach boat, the more tacks they have to do. And that's a really good skill for tacking on the shifts, keeping towards the middle. Racing rules, of course, apply, and those people who get to the front of the fleet have to work harder because the river's narrower and they have to do far more tacks. And if you're a really demanding coach, you can make the exercise go on for a very long time. But yeah, that's one of my favourite little exercises. And you only really need one coach boat and a couple of marks to do it, but you can actually do it if you've got a large enough area like Portland Harbour with 3 coach boats, with the whole exercise moving upwind. And that's one of my favourites. And I think if people are lucky enough, they do eventually catch the coach boat. You can allow them to round you and then go all the way back to start line and start again.
Right, sounds good. So 2 weeks time.
Absolutely, we have another RS back to single-handers, and Richard's actually from Castle Cove Sailing Club. They're in the Purple Beast, and I'm sure he'll have lots to say.
Yeah. It's always nice to see these colours from the RS300. They do seem to.
I think Richard's got a bit of a thing for purple.
Yes, and then the yellow one in the background. So yeah, two weeks time, end of April. So we look forward to that.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.